2 Timothy chapter 3, beginning at verse 1. This know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of Allahayim, having a form of Allahayim, but denying the power thereof. From such turn away. For this sort are they which creep into houses and lead captive silly women, laid with sin, led away with divers lusts, ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. Amen. I read to you today 2 Timothy from chapter 1 to verse 7. Shalom to all of the family that's entering into the chat. Shalom, pure repentance. Let me know if my audio is good today, because the other day it was really choppy. But I was doing my best to go ahead and get the message out there, fam. Aman. Today I got a book for y'all. I hope y'all enjoyed that track that I had played. And if you didn't hear it, I'm gonna play a little snippet of the track that came out, I believe in the 1983. It was a track that a lot of us heard when we was watching TV. I'm gonna let that play again. So that's that right there. I had played that just to thank you, pure repentance. But I had played that, just to bring back a little bit of happy moves, when people was being themselves, and we was growing up as little children playing outside or whatever. Can't wait till that TV show go off so we could watch cartoon. My mama was waiting on her stories to come on or whatever. Just going back to that time, fam. All right. So let me go ahead and begin my reading. Now, I'm going to be reading from, this is a book, Spanish, about the Spanish Inquisition, to let us know about the church.
Now, I'm going to be reading.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It's good. To let us know about the church, the history of the church, of this religion. This is when the Hebrews started calling themselves after the name of that religion. So I'm finna go ahead and jump into this. We're going to see things. We're going to hear things that probably going to trouble some people. But the purpose of this is to bring out the truth so we can always be aware of the truth. The scripture say you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. So we're just going to read this history, and that's it. So let me go ahead and pull up the book for you. Okay, so now if the book jump off of the screen, if we fall off, I'll be right back, all right? Hopefully it won't do that today, but if we fall off, I'll be right back in. So let me begin reading. This book right here is called The Tortures of the Spanish Inquisition, Holding Dark Lessons for Our Life. Okay, so I'm finna go ahead and go into this. I'm gonna give a slight pause and I'll be right with you. Okay, you see Buckley and you see his name at the bottom. That's the author of this right here. I left a link to the thumbnail creator as well. If y'all like the thumbnail, let me know. Now this is bitter and sweet, so We're gonna cover this truth. So we showed you um, on a live before. This right here, this hooded figure famously tortured by the U.S. military officials at Iraq Abu Ghraib prison nearly 20 years ago. Okay, let me switch over. Pardon me if I didn't get your name right. It wasn't on purpose. All right, detail from 19th century. From the 19th century, that means the the 1800s says 1870 by El Libro. They painted what they witnessed, the torture of Isabel Rodriguez. And you know, we've been okay, I'm back. I just got knocked off. So um I can't show y'all the book while I'm reading it because I'll keep getting knocked off. So let me take that on off of here. Save some CPU. And I'm gonna read it from my end so y'all saw the name of the book, right? But I'm gonna go into, can you hear me now? Oh, okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into uh I'm gonna go into reading it, but y'all saw the name of the book. That's the book I want y'all to get a copy of, okay? And this link right here that I'm gonna read to y'all, this also I will leave it underneath the video when it's done because I don't want to keep getting knocked off, fam. I don't like that. Thank you for understanding pure repentance. Okay. I'm on, the kingdom is at hand for real. Right. You know, I was reading books all them other times and nothing ever happened. But all of a sudden now, you know, you can't read nothing. The tortures of the Spanish Inquisitions holding dark lessons for our life. And I'm finna put that up there on the screen for anybody that want to go and check out that book right there. And I'm finna look it up on my end. And you can do the same as well and follow me along, read along with me as we reading this stuff. All right. Because I want you to see it for yourself. I don't want you to depend on just listening, but I want you to see it for yourself. And it's something that comes with when you looking at it in your face. Tortures of Spanish Inquisition. And I've been listening to some news broadcasters saying that a lot of history is being covered over and some things are being moved and this and then the other. So it's important that you learn history so that you won't be learning fake history or revisionist history, because the history that people is listening to is bitter and it ain't sweet, you know. So let me go inside of here. You know, some people believe that covering over history means that it some kind of way brings help or safety. Oh, okay, that's cool. But don't worry, I'll leave it underneath the video when it's done. I'll leave it under there when it's done. So let me go ahead and start reading. So I'm past the pictures. So it goes, in the catacombs of the Bancroft Library, in a chill climate controlled vault, is a 1,300 page document that tells the horrors of Manuel de Luciana's life and death as a clandestine Jew during the Spanish Inquisition, in black ink and old parchment scribes. Some 400 years ago, penned the details of his lengthy imprisonment and his coerced, coerced testimony, along with interrogation and torture of other Jews implicated in the investigation. In the end, De Luciana and members of his family, countless others, admitted their guilt and incriminated those that they loved and were then burned at the stake. This grim account is a central exhibit in a powerful new book by Ron H. Hassner, a UC Berkeley political scientist and scholar of the history of war, anatomy of torture, Cornell University Press, May 2022, is in part a telling of how the Roman Catholic Church, backed by the Spanish Ferdinand II and Queen Isabella, Ayazabala, remember that Jezebel, Ayazabala, used physical and psychological torture systematically to crush communities of Judeans, Muslims, remember, Moors and Moriscos, we going back into that, Protestants, and others seen as heretics by anatomy. Is also a story of the early 21st century, the time following the terror attacks of September the 11th, 2001, and the subsequent invasion of Iraq, when a panicked and angry nation increasingly implored torture and justified its cruelty as essential for security. Anatomy of Torture. Ron E. Hassner, Anatomy of Torture, Cornell University Press, May 2022, in probing the practices of the Spanish Inquisition. Remember this. Hassner makes a devastating argument against America's use of torture for centuries later. 4 centuries later, in distilling the story, though he comes to an understanding that is deeply to provoke both opponents of torture and human rights advocates. Hassner is not shy of controversy at UC Berkeley on religion and violent conflict, religion in the military and on the battlefield, and strife over holy shrines. He teaches a class on war in the Middle East, a minefield of a minefield of course, but hugely popular. In a recent interview, why is it hugely popular? Interview, Hassner said he was motivated to write Anatomy by the ill-informed and politicized nature of the debate in the United States. But he acknowledged such work is morally fraught. There is a great uneasiness in studying torture, he said, bitter and sweet, if only because there is only so much one can learn from 400 years old cases about torture today. The comparison ought to be conducted in extreme caution and trepidation at the same time. It is important to place some facts on the table. A story of anguish told in ink, parchment, and grains of sand. The Spanish Inquisition began in 1478, and for more than 300 years, it pushed aggressively to repress what the monarchy saw as heresy. So let's count up from 300, from 478, 300. All right. There's 1400, 1500, 1600, 1700. What was going on in the 1400s with the Judeans, 1500s, 1600, 1700. What was going on with the Judeans during those times? The 14 included. Aggressively to repress what the monarchy saw as heresy. So if you allow it to happen to one, it can happen to another. If you allow it to become law and a normal practice to happen to one, it can happen to others. The Inquisition pursued its mandate in Spain can happen to anybody after a while. Mandate in Spain, Portugal, and across the Spanish colonies. Spanish colonies, including Mexico, its particular target, Judean. And then look at what they say, conversos. What is a Judean converso? Somebody that practiced Judaism? Were the people in these colonies being oppressed because they accepted Judaism? Or was it because of the color of their skin, they were given a status as slaves? Perpetual slaves. Did the Bible come from Spain and Portugal and Mexico? Or did it come from a place that they call Africa? Was the manuscripts written on paper created in Europe? Or was it written before the Europeans came down? Was it written on papyrus scrolls? Or was it written on modern day paper? Shalom, Makype showers. How you doing? So we going into this, family. We going into this, because something happened with the Spanish in the Spanish Inquisition, that they was coming at Muslims, but they was not arresting Muslims with a particular look, nor was they arresting Muslims with a particular bloodline. It was specific Muslims that converted either to Muslim or converted to Judaism, Christianity, and all of these were working all together with one common consensus. Let me move to a more comfortable position. So we're going to go into this history and we're going to see what exactly happened and let who is who be who is who. And we're going to get the correct understanding about that. So let me save this because this is the one that I didn't have underneath the video. And then I'm finna go ahead and look up Spanish, Spain, and Portuguese. Uh, uh, so let's go. All right. And there's a picture an artist drew from those times of the Spanish and Portuguese Judeans. All right. And perhaps I'll make that one a screensaver. I don't know. But I think I should leave that bitter and sweet up there. Spanish and Portuguese Judeans. I posted them on my tab when I'm done. Also called, this is something that they called them, Western Sephardim, Iberian Judeans, and Peninsula Judeans. These were the people that was under assault, are a distinctive subgroup of what they call Sephardic Judeans, Jews, who are largely descent from Judah, who are largely descent from Judah, who live as new Christians in Iberian Peninsula during the few centuries following the forced expulsion of unconverted Judeans to the Roman Catholic religion. During the few centuries following the forced expulsion of unconverted Judeans, Judah, the tribe of Judah, from Spain in 1492 and from Portugal in 1497. Let me save this because it's another book that I'm going to have to share with y'all as well. So now, when, because we're going to look up the first colonized state by Spain. When was Florida founded? Remember this now. So look at this. Florida was founded by a Spanish explorer. I share this information. Johann Ponce de Leon in 1513. And he made the first known European landing in a peninsula. It became a U.S. state on March the 3rd, 1845. Remember, Florida was first called Spanish Florida. Okay, let's look up Jamestown. When was Jamestown founded? Jamestown was founded in 1607. Now, y'all remember Jamestown and Pocahontas? Year of first colony in the U.S. Back then, it wasn't called the U.S. So we go here to colony history of the United States. The colony history of the United States covers the period of European colonization of North America from the 15th century. That means the 14th, because it's a 15th century, they're talking about the 14th, until the unifying of the 13 British colonies and creation of the United States in 1776 during the Revolutionary War that Negroes fought in. And creation of the United States in 1776 during the Revolutionary War. In the late 16th century, England, France, Spain, and Dutch Republic launched major colonization expeditions in North America. England, France, and Spain, and the Dutch Republic launched major colonization expeditions in North America. The death rate was very high among early immigrants, and some early attempts disappeared altogether, such as English lost colony Roanoke. Nevertheless, successful colonies were established within several decades. Colonial era. So let's go back up here and see if they did any revisionism with this right here, because you know, in the United States, there is a long history of revisionism with history. From the late 15th century until unifying of the 13 British colonies and creation of the United States in 1776, during the Revolutionary War in the late 16th century, England, France, and Spain, and the Dutch Republic launched major colonization expeditions in North America. The death rate was very high among early immigrants. So they're not talking about the slaves' death rates. They're talking about their death rates. So they're talking about immigrants, because the slaves were not immigrants, nor was the indigenous folk that was here. And I know of a certain that the indigenous folk in Florida spoke Arabic, because Tallahassee, uh, and when they called our ancestors Seminoles, the Spanish call us Seminolas, they called us Seminoles. They spoke Arabic, like you got Lake Chattahoochee and all these different Arabic terms for different places. And the Muskogee Creek, they migrated from the upper area to come down to this lower area. Okay. So unifying the 13 British colonies, creation of the United States in 1776 during the Revolutionary War in the late 16th century, that's the 1500s. The other one was the 14. And Dutch Republic launched major colonization expeditions in North America. The death rate was very high among early immigrants. Remember that war with the Muskogee Creek and the runaway slaves that they named Black Seminoles when they fought, how they won them wars? Launched major colonization expeditions in North America. The death rate was very high among early immigrants because they were trying to hurt innocent people. And some early attempts dis, disappeared altogether, such as the English lost colony of Roanoke. Nevertheless, successful colonies were established within several decades. That's why it was named Spanish Florida. Colonial area of the United States, early 16th century, 1776. And they have a photo there. European settlers, see, those are the settlers. European settlers came from a variety of social and religious groups, including adventurers, farmers, indentured servants, like when you go and work at a regular job, not being a chattel slave, tradesmen, and a very few from atrocity, I guess, settlers included the Dutch of New Netherlands, the Swedes, and the Finns of New Sweden, the English Quakers of the province of Pennsylvania, the English Port, Puritans of New England, the Virginian Cavaliers, the English Catholics and Protestants, nonconformists of the province of Maryland, the worthy poor of the province of Georgia, the Germans, where you get the word Ashkenaz in Hebrew, which means Germans, who settled the mid-Atlantic colonies. Atlantic is a Greek word that means Ethiopian colonies, which means African, if you want to be exact, what they call it today, because they called everything in the whole continent, even North Africa at one time, Ethiopia. On old maps, you'll see Ethiopia as the name of every country in North, what they call the Middle East. In the South, they called all of it, Europeans called all of it Ethiopia. All right. Ethiop. That's why they called the Atlantic Ocean Ethiopian Ocean. Colonies. And the Ulster Scots of Alpacan Mountains, and it means land of the blacks. These groups all become part of the United States when it gained its independence in 1776. Russian America and parts of New France and New Spain. These are nations come together, and later on down the line, they created a class system, a class system. So they created a class system um, to stop the poor Europeans from raising up against the rich Europeans that got all the money and wealth. They turn around and tell them to kiss them where the sun don't shine when they want something done. Like when they said that they don't want to be, when they wanted help from the hurricane, and the rich people turned around and told them to kiss them where the sun don't shine at. But anyway, in New Spain were also incorporated, so it's a corporation, LLC. What's a LLC? A corporation, right? Well, also incorporated into the United States. The United States is a LLC, if you want to think about it, or it's um, a corporation, incorporate. It's a business. And New Spain were also incorporated into the United States at later times. The diverse colonists from these various regions, so everywhere where they established themselves, they established a corporation. And the names that they gave to the places were the names for the corporation. They first called their corporation, uh, they called it Ophir. Then uh, they called their corporation Ethiopia. Then they called their corporation Land of the Blacks. Then they called their corporation Negro Land. The products of their corporation were the ones that they colonized in Northeast Africa. You read it all throughout biblical history. Only in these days, the history becomes shadowed and revised. Independent in 1776, Russian America and part of New France and New Spain were also incorporated into the United States at later times. Diverse colonists from the various regions built colonies of distinctive social, religious, political, and economic style. In Florida, we spoke Spanish. The Negroes spoke Spanish. Wherever the British set up their colony, and when they set up a colony in Mississippi, they spoke what the British spoke. Were also incorporated into the United States at later times. The diverse colonies from there, and that there was a time when they said we're going to make English the standard language. That's why inside of school, everybody had to speak proper English. Remember that? But we were learning Spanish in school as well because Spanish had a colony in America as well. So America is a diverse place with diverse languages. Over time, non-British colonies east of the Mississippi River were taken over, and most of the inhabitants were assimilated into Nova Scotia. However, the British expelled the French Catholic Acadians. The British expelled the French Catholic Acadians, and many relocated to Louisiana. What was going on in Louisiana? Y'all remember where y'all get the Louisiana hot sauce from? Where you get the soul food at? Okay, so it's a corporation. The two chief armed rebellions were short-lived. There was an uprising of the Abid, of the slaves, what they called the Zanj. Failures in Virginia in 1676 and New York in 1687. These are all the things that the European uh, uh, scholar had written down in his book. That book that I want y'all to check out. That Pure Repentance tag for y'all. Let me put that up there. So this is the time zone that he's talking about, and we just read it. Historical documented proof. It say that they were attacking Judeans. Some of the Judeans were forced to, if you don't become a Muslim, we're gonna cut your head off. If you don't become a Christian, we're gonna burn you to the stake and put you in a torture chamber. Uh, if you don't become uh, if you don't be under uh, the the other one, all right, which was another form of religion, with the Talmud. If you don't become under this, you're gonna be dealt with. So no matter what they face, these people who were Judeans, according to historians, who were Judeans that set up uh, uh, um, their tents in different places. They uh, they were there in Spain and Portugal as refugees. Why do people come inside of countries as refugees? Because of war. These people were war captives when they were being caught. Because of war, they were expelled. They left, and the ones that didn't leave, heads were getting crushed against stones and stuff. Biblical prophecy sound familiar to you? And so they were there in Spain and Portugal, which is Rome. The Apostle Paul was a citizen of Rome, but he was mistaken for a Hamite. He was a citizen of Rome, but was mistaken for a Kemetic Hamite. All right. So that was a refugee place, right? So when they left out of there, if you was a they it was citizens of Spain and Portugal. There were people that went over there inside of the colonies over there. And then there was some that went down beyond the mountains, went to the mountains like the Messiah told them to do. So legalized systems of slavery. Now, so when you see the trouble that the writer of the book he was speaking about, and when you put who's who and put their identity with them, now you're starting to get a really clearer understanding of what kind of situation that has been occurring. And if you ever wonder and you thought that there was something wrong with you inside of your head, to show you that, we might have gone mad because of all of this stuff. But realizing what's going on don't make you slow, it don't make you dumb. It just makes you aware, and it gives you a more clearer way of seeing things, even though every last one of us are put in a mad, in a, uh, 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 I don't want to say this, I'm not trying to be offensive, but a state of mental illness. Every nation take care of themselves, fam. Look at Britain, they got the workers, they got the different sections of workers, they got the policemen, they order it, they set up they presidents and stuff, but Negroes, descendants of slaves, walking around here, some of us like nothing ever happened. And then we wonder why there are certain things that we need to do. And and other people looking at you, just telling you, do this, do that, by ignoring some people are ignoring the current status by trying to erase it as if you were never given a lot of inheritance. All right. So let me read a little bit more because I'm almost done. And in New York, and in 1689, 1691, some of the colonies developed legalized systems of slavery. All right. Chattel slavery. Think about this. Because the Europeans came over here as indentured workers, like regular jobs. They had a jubilee period. They had a debt forgiving period and all type of stuff centered largely around the Ethiopian slave trade. Think about that. The land of the blacks, slave trade. Wars. It wasn't just a slave trade. This was a war. So when people keep saying that World War III might happen, World War III already happened. You thinking, if you think about it clearly and see yourself as a part of Adam and not as an animal, subconsciously holding yourself to a place where you're not seeing your nation as a nation. That's why a lot of us probably don't realize that that war that we was in over our freedom and over our country and over our sovereignty, they don't see themselves as a nation. Centered largely around the Ethiopian slave trade war, the land of the blacks. Remember Negro land, and who did they target? Waida, Lam Lam, Soyuda, Yahuda, Judah on the west coast of Africa. They set up, you remember the Library of Timbuktu? Remember the Songhai Empire that they tried to set up where they wanted to go to get away from that mess? Remember the wall that they built that was torn down and that history was hidden? Remember the walls that they built up and it was torn down? Remember the limber? Remember the limber of the northern tribe and the southern tribe? Because the Kohen would be inside of the southern tribe as well. The priests, Levi, and Banyayamayan was in of the tribe of Judah, right? The kingdom of Judah, my bad. Solomon had one more. So there was another part of us that that was brought into slavery first. They had their own temples and stuff. They ran from slavery, and that slavery is still going on till this very day. Read inside of the book of Acts, you'll see people coming from the land of the blacks carrying the tree for Hamashiach. You'll see a Israelite that was in Ethiopia as a eunuch. Who was making them eunuchs? The Muslim. The Muslim. So you see this? You remember they make them to be inside of the royal courts. They would amputate those Negroes that left out of that colony and went beyond the river of Ethiopia and set up themselves. It took a year and a half to get down there. And they left for themselves markers to show you that they've been there. The Limber people, what they call them workers, Limber, they left, which was full of the 10 tribes they left from they crossed the river Euphrates. So you seeing the history of the Bible right now. You see the history connect your past with your present, with truth and understanding. Light removes what you can't see, and it gives you the perception, the accurate perception of the current, right? Does it fix everything and make everything good? No, it gives you a more clarity of mind. Does it mean that you're not going through that no more because you learned the truth? No, it gives you a clarity of mind so you can make better decisions, so we can make better decisions. Some of us only want to drink white ice, but we don't like no black ice. We say white ice tastes better. But we need to build our shops where we have black ice. And if you want to help others or want to support others, but make sure, like my daddy say, make sure that home is taken care of first. Your people is home first. The Kahan, when they sacrifice for themselves and their family and their tribes and all the tribes. Y'all see that? Two chiefs armed rebellions were short-lived failures in Virginia in 1676 and New York in 1689. Police coming by the ship. 1691. Some of the colonies developed legalized systems of slavery, centered largely around the Ethiopian slave trade. Remember, land of the black slave trade war. They wanted the land and they wanted the people. They wanted the free labor. Reoccurring, reoccurrent between the French and the British during the French and Indian Wars. They say Indian. I'm just reading how they got it. By 1760, France defeated and its colonies were seized by Britain. That's why you had places that was under France rule, then it switched over to British rule. But when the United States, that's when they made a pact. That's when they started making the government how you see it today. All right. So that's all I'm finna do for today. So let me go ahead and copy that inside of the chat. So when I get done, um, I go ahead and line it up properly underneath the video. But I am grateful today for y'all that showed up. Remember to get that book right there. That our sister had put down, fam. This is the book right here. Remember to look at the book right here that the scholar, the European scholar, had put together for y'all can read. And I'm gonna leave the other history underneath the video so y'all can read. All right, fam. Glad that y'all came. And I want to say shalom to you again. And enjoy the background music. Bring it back to the 1980s when people didn't get offended at every little thing. Shalom.